Hey, welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to do water-soluble ink, and I'm going to show you why I love it for drawing people in motion. We'll talk about how to convert your line into a painting, how to get the strongest shadow shapes, and this is really the fastest way to capture people in full motion. Okay, so I have this drawing of another one of our guitarists from the Musicians. So we're going to do the water-soluble. I'm just using clear water and my Da Vinci travel brush. These are these self-threading protective cases. I love these brushes for working in the field. So here's the magic. It's the most compact way to paint. You're really getting 2 for 1. When you do the drawing, you're already done. The shadow shapes just come like an edge pull. A little bit of water right out of the existing lines, melting like magic. I love it. It's so fun. And there's a spontaneity that you can't get any other way, because the water is going to do some things that surprises you. So it's like your partner in the process. You and the water working together make something neither of you expected. See how it just does some magic flow? You can instantly turn your loose, open marks into solid masses. And when I say before, long ago I was saying how this is why I'm keeping it open, because I'm thinking about color later. I'm planning ahead for color. I know that I'll be able to divide things into solid shape. This scarf gets some attention, but then in her shirt, I'm just going to catch little accents, reinforcing where are those shadow shapes that I'd put into the clues I'd left myself. There's her sleeve there. And you can pull it a little farther if you want. In the hand, I might have what's the shadow side of the fingers versus the back of the hand. Little contact shadows that I talked about before. Pull those out. So there you go. Instant painterly effect on top of your drawing. There's the... It's so much fun. I love this. And this is the kind of thing you can do, like I talked about knitting. After all the action's over, you can just relax and doodle on your drawings and improve them. So much fun. Okay, there it is. So now, let's take it on to some motion. We're going to move to our mountain bikes. We have some guys doing tricks in the skateboard park with the trick bikes. So this is, you couldn't ask for any more motion, but it's useful in that it's a thing that has a repetitive cycle. They're going around and around the track, doing essentially the same thing over and over. That's what's good about sport. You know, they're moving really quickly, and it is a challenge to capture it, but if you wait for it, it's going to come back. So I'm going to start gesturing back to the beginning. It's the whole process. Gesture with the pencil, refine with the ink, and it'll look like I'm doing the same thing until we get to the magic of the water-soluble. So you're looking for just the big shapes. He's got the curve of his back. That's the largest shape, and where the key anchor points that I like are where his hands are touching the handlebars. And then I subdivide into the second most important thing is the angle of his head. Just this big lima bean for his head. So there's my very loose gesture, and it's very pale on the page. But in this thing, I have this extra issue, the complexity of the bike itself. I'm looking for some things like the shadow of his sleeve. Let's pull out the shape of the helmet. There's always a little bit of detail you can look for. That's kind of stuff I'll get in the ink, the way the helmet has these little vents or something on there, I don't know. So there's that. So now he's starting to come together as a shape. So I'm watching the action. Every time the bike turns sideways to me, I can start to get some clues as to its structure. So sometimes I have to follow the guy around. And when I'm working in the field, I'll often be walking around myself, physically moving to stay closer to the target. So drawing bikes is the hardest thing. They have this double triangle thing. If you can get that right, that's the frame of the bike, then we know that his foot is going to hit the pedals down there. The other foot is always somewhat in the background. And then, for me, the trick to drawing bikes is not to get too concerned about the wheels. There's details, though. There's these little, the forks of the bike. So if I get this mechanical structure, then I'm not going to worry too much about, I'm not going to draw all those little spokes. Just like I didn't draw, if you remember way back, the checkered pattern on the fellow's shirt. So yeah, that's a capture. But I'm going to keep looking. I'm going to keep looking at shapes. There's another one I saw just now. That's a gesture. That's the posture that I saw there. He's standing up on the handlebars. So there's that straight line of his arms. The elbows are like locked. His hand's going to hit here. I'm looking like right down the axis of the bike here. Sometimes you see something in just a flash of motion, and now it's in your visual memory. It's like you have a few seconds while your memory is fresh, and if you glance back, you can find some details in a totally different position of a foot or something that you can add to this one. And you want to get it while that memory is alive. And the more you do it, it's like a muscle. The more you do it, you get exercised, it builds up. You can make that memory last a little bit longer the more you do it. But you got to keep it while it's fresh. So that's another posture. It doesn't look like much, but we'll get to the ink, right? Remember this idea of sketching and then refinement. Oh, I just saw another good one. I want to wait for him to come back around that bowl again. And he does this thing where they're like flying sideways. He's looking where he's headed. His elbows up, one hand down. But this is the bike. The bike is like in here. So that's a gesture. That's the information. And now I'm looking for anchor points. Like how the shirt flares out and the elbow tucks in to where the hand is hitting those handlebars. I'm sure that bike people are going to will see all those little details, but that you're getting wrong, the anatomy of the bike. But it's just an impression that you want, that you were there, you saw this thing, it happened in a lightning fast move. So I should talk a bit about that. You have to set yourself some expectations on a given day. I'm out here and I'm going to do this super fast thing with these technical objects like these bikes in here. So I don't expect to get a portrait quality drawing like I might get with the captive subjects. What I expect to get is a sense of the motion, the unique posture. What is the one thing or the one type of motion that happens that's unique to this, that I wouldn't see in any other kind of activity? That's the kind of thing I want to get, where he's like defying gravity for a second where he's up on the wall. So that's the pose that caught my eye just for a minute. And as he loops around, he comes back to it and it only lasts for a few seconds. But when he's doing something else, I noticed there's a strap on the helmet. So I'll pull that detail from a totally different thing, and then sometimes I'll go back and I'm like, oh yeah, there's a strap on the helmet. So I'll come back and put it in another drawing. And even if there was 5 or 6 people doing this on the field, there's other bikers moving around, you might find a detail like that, like, oh, they wear gloves or something, even though he doesn't, this guy doesn't. And then you'd go and add it to another drawing. Like, yeah, they wear gloves. I'll put it on this guy too. So that's the thing about combining all the information you have. Oh, wait, I have a couple sketches here, so let me ink them up. So I just used the same fountain pens. I love the Lamy fountain pen. And I actually have 2 sets. There's a set, I have the blue one is the waterproof ink, and then these are water-soluble. I use the Lamy cartridge, the name brand cartridge. That happens to be water-soluble ink. So that's useful. You can just stick with the house brand and you know you've got the effect you want. So it's the same fountain pens, the same drawing techniques, and now I'm just going to look and see what information I can add. Shadow shapes. Where are those marks that I'm going to want to turn in this strap that goes across the head? And I want to darken that in. Thinking of the living open line of the helmet. A moving subject probably gets a little more of a gestural treatment, a little more of that continuous, not even picking up the pen. There's a little shadow on that elbow there. And now we'll get the big shape of the hand, what I call the mitten. And going back for some little shadows. And say there's fingers there, which will reinforce those later. A little bit of bike. There's a little thing I noticed about this bike. I'm not getting it perfect, but it has this U-shaped handlebar bit. So I want to get the sense of that. Even by no means am I concerned about it being specifically correct. Just the sense of the way the forks of the bike have a bit of a curve to them. And there's one behind the other wheel. So I'll leave that shape open because I mean, I can actually see both of those, but I don't worry about that one behind. Build up his body. There's a little interesting negative space there. I know that the front of the arm comes there, so I'll connect that up to make a little air pocket, a little negative space. It's a little neat little surprise that happens in the drawing. The bunch up of his t-shirt. And I'm thinking ahead that I'm going to hit that with some black later. So it's always like, where's that knee, where's that ankle? So I can get from one anchor point to the other. And the beauty of this washable ink, I happen to know this is going to be dark later. So I can just do this scribbling that I'm going to soften out. Thinking ahead to what's going to melt. Details on his shoes. He's got kind of Vans, so they have a little bit of a. And one thing that's neat about it is the way these guys, this pose, they're never on the seat of the bike. They're always sort of flying above it. So I get that way. There's that space there. So occasionally I will go back to the waterproof pen. Remember, the platinum carbon is the ink I recommend for waterproof, and the Lamy brand ink for water-soluble. So I will occasionally go back and use a few waterproof lines, because maybe I don't want the fine details of the face to melt away entirely. So I'll have a few in there. Those are safe lines inside of my meltable line. Just so I know I won't lose that entirely. You get the sense of when you want to switch back and forth. Again, the mechanics of things, like how this actually works. I just want a silhouette that implies those shapes, because what I care about is the guy, not his gear. If I really cared about getting a portrait of the bike, I guess what I would have to do is 20 or 30 of them till I really knew the thing and could draw it inside out. So the more you do a subject, the more that'll come. But for now, I'm not totally worried about the bike. I'm just scribbling it in, and I'm going to go to the brush pen. So this is actually a different brush pen. You remember I used the Pentel pocket brush, saying how that was the best waterproof brush. This one's a Japanese brush called the Kuretake number 13, which I love because it's water-soluble ink in this brush. So yeah, there's that silhouette of the bike frame happening, and I'm just picking up the masses of those information, that there is some gearing systems going on here, and there's some spokes and the tires. But I want it almost to be like the invisible bike, because the character is the important thing. So it's a nod to the fact there's a bike there. It's an impression of a bike. But if you're a bike fanatic and you want to draw the bikes more than when you draw the people, that's cool too. Enjoy. Sometimes I look for something like, does he have a little bit of He has a logo on his shirt. I'll look for that little thing that I could maybe do later. A little splash of color where the logo is. We'll come back for some weight. When you're placing these darks with water-soluble, you're thinking about what you're going to melt later. So you're leaving yourself a little ink reservoir on the page. Remember breadcrumbs? The idea of brush strokes that accent a form and carry the eye down a passage. There's a little bit of that. I know he has these dark pants, so I'm making these tick-marked reservoirs that I'm going to smooth out later. Oh, his seat is dark as well. Okay, let's just move on and ink these others. Ink, and I've done the erasing. So that's the part I like, because now I've removed the evidence of my struggle and we just have these final drawings. And each one is a unique pose that really captures the movement of what's going on there. So they're ready for the washing. I'm going to pick this guy as my one. So it's just looking for the shadow shapes, searching for what are those things that I want to fuse together. There's the inside of that leg. And you just let the water do the magic. This is so fun. I can't get over how much I love this. You really have to, I mean, it helps if you really love drawing, so you're laughing out loud when you do something. I mean, that's the reason you're out there practicing all the time, because you kind of just love doing it. Instant shadow side to the character. Now remember, I'd done a little bit of waterproof in his features, so now I can pull the shadow under the helmet out to make the face. He's a little stern, but he's a sportsman. To make that face, but I don't lose entirely the eyes and nose. If I think something's a little too dark, I'll just do a lift, wet it, lift it with a paper towel, a little blot. Shadow side to the helmet. Sometimes I'll pick up a little bit of the ink and use it to make action marks, splots. So there we go. Fun. And I'll just do this. This is what I'll do after all of the fun is over. The bikers are drinking their Mountain Dew, and I get to go and do my knitting, toy with my sketchbooks, just improving things here and there, a little tweaking. It's a great little fun, relaxing activity at the end of the day. Tint up your sketches. So, that's that. Fun, huh? Okay, time to head out into the field and give